Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today, Greenland Up Close. And we are here today with our Chief Exploration Officer, Olaf Malver. Olaf is an explorer extraordinaire, and his enthusiasm for investigating the planet's most remote and dramatic destinations is second to none. Driven by a passion for the history of the world's greatest explorers, Olaf is deeply committed to opening remaining frontiers to like-minded travelers. He speaks 6 languages, has a PhD in chemistry and a master's in international law and diplomacy, and is a former science educator at the University of California, San Francisco. Olaf has been a travel guide for more than 30 years, leading kayaking trips on all of the 7 seas and hikes and treks worldwide. And he's pioneered numerous paddling routes on groundbreaking expeditions, particularly in Greenland, which is what we're going to talk about today, where he's been actually 38 times and probably even more now. We'll have to double check that number with him. He has traveled cross-country by dog sled and hiked in more than 80 countries over 35 years. And Olaf is a fellow of the Exclusive Explorers Club, an honor bestowed on a handful of the world's premier adventurers. And now, as our CEO, Chief Exploratory Officer, Olaf ensures that we maintain the same true spirit of adventure that has driven all of the great explorers for centuries. Olaf, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Lee, for that kind introduction. And thank you to you in the audience who chose this afternoon to listen to my talk called Greenland Up Close. Yes, I have a strange title, Chief Exploratory Officer, and that's because I have the opportunity to go out in the world in many of the unexplored corners of the planet and find new places for natural habitat adventures. But there's no other place that I love more, and that is why I have returned back to that island so many times. And that is Greenland. Greenland started for me when I was born, because right after I was born, my parents took off for Greenland to work there as doctors. They're Danish. I'm actually Danish-American. And they left me with my grandmother, and I guess that was the urge that was enough for me to get called back up in 1987 and do some kayaking trips and climbing trips in eastern Greenland. So I've been asked to do this presentation because I am very enthusiastic about the place and because I know a lot about it. So I hope I can share that knowledge and that enthusiasm with you today. The reason that we call this, that I call this slideshow Up Close is that I think this particularly product that I will tell you about today is a very unique product even in Greenland. What we will try to do is to get you a feeling for what Natural Habitat is doing right now in Greenland, but today is going to be not so much a sales pitch for our trip to Greenland, but more putting the emphasis on the context of Greenland in the world of conservation and where we are today with such heavy topics such as global warming and conservation. As you can see here on the first slide, there's a double logo, and that is the partnership between the World Wildlife Fund, United States, and Natural Habitat Adventures. We have been partnering up for very obvious reasons because we both believe in excellence and we also believe in getting the conservation message out to our travelers and supporting World Wildlife Fund in their conservation efforts as well. So we take all our travelers that are going with us are all having the opportunity to become members of WWF, and we also take a lot of WWF members out on our trips. So it's in the context of this that I want to open my Greenland talk today, this wonderful partnership. World Wildlife Fund is active all over the world, depending on what species that needs to protect it and are endangered. You can see here the world colored in different colors, and some of them are in oceans around areas, mostly to protect the coral reef habitats. And you can see we have Indonesia, the Mediterranean, Sumatra, even the Antarctic Peninsula as habitats that world wildlife scientists and support programs are involved with. But all the way on top of this picture, you can see the numeral 5 is the Arctic. And World Wildlife Fund is very much involved in the Arctic as well. What they do in the Arctic is basically providing up-to-date and reliable information on that climate change which is happening in the Arctic. They also support financially field-based projects to get that necessary information to tell us, that can tell us what is really happening these days. And of course, with all that information in hand, they will help implementing agencies to adapt strategies for the species and the ecosystems in the Arctic. So what is happening? Well, in particular in Greenland, I can tell you, I did a little bit of research, and the bottom line is that it's melting at a very fast rate. In fact, 6 times this decade than last decade. When you fly over Greenland, for those of you who fly from the States to Europe, you often cross the ice cap, but you can't really see what's going on down there. But if you get close, and particularly in summer, you will suddenly find a lot of the surface is getting mushy, and big rivers are getting formed, and those rivers goes into deep holes on the ice cap, which is the second largest ice cap in the world, and disappearing underneath this very thick, mild thick ice cap, and finally make its way to the ocean as cold, fresh, melting water. Some people have, some of these scientists that have been measuring some of the melting on the Greenland ice cap have come up with some of these data here. As you can see, these are just melt anomalies over 3 years, 2011, 2012, and 2013. And although there are different pictures, you can see that the color red is the prevailing color of the ice cap surface. And if you had slides from 2014 and 15, and also this year for 16, which was a very hot year, I know for 15 the surface was completely red, and for the first time in the history after the last ice age, all of the surface of Greenland was melted in August, and that meant that the color of the ice basically not was white anymore, and because it was dark melted water on the surface, and that melted water, because it's dark, would attract even more heat and melt faster. So that leads me to the Arctic Riviera, and that's basically the coastline on the east coast of Greenland. That is where I have done most of my Greenland exploration, and it has changed completely my life because of the experiences and the beauty and the grandiose scenery there is there. Let's look at the map. You can see Greenland there a little bit right of the center of the map, and eastern Greenland, the coast from the northernmost part of the world to the southernmost part of Greenland, Cap Farvel, is a very, very long coast. And if you notice, then there is this mass of ice licking down the coast and protruding between Iceland and Greenland. And that is the ice that is spit out from the polar basin that rotates in a counterclock fashion. So in a way, this East Greenland coast has for many, many years been protected by that mass of ice and icebergs. In fact, those were the icebergs that hit the Titanic on its way south of Newfoundland, because all of these big icebergs actually spit out and continue south by the south-going current. So Eastern Greenland has been protected, and not much tourism has gone out there because it's simply very difficult to get to by ship. So if you want to find one of the most remote places on Earth, one of the most remote coastlines on Earth, there are three places. One is the, actually also on this slide here, the northern coast of Siberia, the east coast of Greenland, and the backside of Antarctica. Today we're just going to talk about the east coast of Greenland, because that's really the focus of this talk. This is just a picture from some of the mundane peaks, of which there are tens of thousands on the coast of eastern Greenland. Many of these peaks are unnamed. Many of the glaciers have no names either, and it's just absolutely stunning, the kind of scenery that still most people don't know about. You cannot see how spectacular it is from when you fly up there in your airplane and eat your peanuts and drink your drinks and look out the window and see the ice mass below. So what we're going to talk about today is this trip, this itinerary, this destination that Natural Habitat has created in eastern Greenland. Remember, this coast is the wildest in the world because it was protected. Even Greenlanders are not living there, local people. When you look at Greenland, the west coast of Greenland is inhabited by 64,000 people because it's ice-free, it's easier to fish there and make a living out of the ocean, whereas eastern Greenland only has about 2,500 people that live there, and most of them live on that red spot you see on the picture. It is the city of Tasiilaq or Ammassalik, depending on who you are. So the idea was here to get people to Iceland and then take a flight, and it's only 1.5 hour flight from Iceland to eastern Greenland. It's very easy to get to, and as you know, Iceland is a really, what shall I say, hot destination these days. It has grown tremendously, and we are starting to see the same spillover to Greenland and an interest in the high Arctic. I think people realize it's a peaceful place. There's no terrorists or problems or wars, and people are going more and more to natural beauty and remote places, and now it's finally possible to get there in a very easy way. We do stay in Hotel Reykjavik Marina in Reykjavik, and you know, per Natural Habitat's trips, we find some of the best hotels, best value and high value hotels in each town and each place we stay at. So of course we chose this kind of accommodation in Iceland. And then we drive out to the domestic airport and take a Fokker flight, as I said, 1.5 hour westwards. And already when we start approaching the Greenland, East Greenland coastline, we see how beautiful it is down there. You can actually see here on this picture here the color of the ocean, which is kind of light blue and not dark blue, and that is because of the meltwater coming off from the ice cap. So already now we have a hint of what's going on down there. We land in Greenland, and then we hop with a Bell helicopter over to the so-called capital of Eastern Greenland. It's really fun to fly with helicopter, and if we are lucky, we can even see some whales below on the ocean below us. And then we arrived to the administrative center of Eastern Greenland, Tasiilaq. Tasiilaq is about 1,600 people, and then there are people living in small villages in this neighborhood here. So you're looking at the bustling capital of Eastern Greenland here. It is a town that was not discovered, but before, like 130 years ago, when some Danish explorers went up along the eastern coast in kayaks and umiaks, and they found the Greenlanders living here by this little bay here, and they lived from hunting, sealing, and fishing, and they caught a little fish called Yangmaset. So the old name of this place is called Ammassalik. That means the place where the Yangmaset lives. So we come here to this town and we visit the museum, the beautiful church, and we try to get a feel for what Greenland is all about. Well, Greenland is all about ice and snow and a few months of very wonderful weather on the coast. Eastern Greenland has much better weather. That's why it's called the Arctic Riviera than Western Greenland, because most of the weather is coming from the west, and gets the rain falls in the west, and then it gets cooled off by the ice cap, and then you have drier weather in Eastern Greenland. So it's perfect weather-wise to come there and visit it in the summer. The Greenlanders who live there, of course, all have all their families from Eastern Greenland, most of them. And remember, some of these people, their grandmothers and grandfathers, they were born in a sod hut, and some of them still practice sustainable hunting as a way of getting their food to their families. The Danish, I would just say that Denmark has been involved in Greenland politics, and it belongs to the Danish Royal Kingdom, although the Greenlanders have a lot of say in their own home rule governments. So anyhow, we go there and we get a feel for Greenland, the socio-economical challenges, and meet people there. We experience some drum dancing. We get to meet some of the mushers that show us how to drive their dogs, and our expedition leaders, who one of them will follow you from Iceland, will really give you a good idea of what this is all about in a Greenlandic modern and historical context. You can see on this picture here, in fact, to the right behind this picture here, there's a ruin of an old sod hut. That green little fortress or little setting is actually a place where about 10 to 16 Greenlanders lived just like 50 years ago. So we are walking straight into history, visiting this wonderful place. Well, looking into the future of where Greenlanders are going, all depends on the weather in Greenland. Because it's a community who lives from fishing and hunting, and is so traditional that what they do and how they experience things is all about what's happening in the climate. Their future, and this little girl's future, looking through the frame of the future, is all depending on what's happening with the climate of the world. It is shown that the temperatures of the ocean is rising very rapidly in Greenland. I just actually wrote a blog about that you'll soon find on Natural Habitat Adventures website. A blog about how suddenly there are many whales outside Ammassalik in the ocean. We saw parts of 25 to 30 whales near Kulusuk Airport on the way home this year. And we also, some of our Greenlanders who worked for us, they went out fishing, and they were basically shoveling tons of cod and mackerel out of the ocean, something that has never been seen before. The mackerel are moving into the fjord system, and the mackerel is chased by tuna, yellowfish tuna. So, and that is a subtropical temperate fish now roaming in southern Greenland waters. So for sure the fish are telling us that things are happening rapidly right now. Now fish to the Greenlanders of course means wealth for them, because that is a very important source of income. And in fact in Tasiilaq they are now debating, the politicians, of when to buy and materials to build a new fishery that can employ some of the people who right now don't have a job in town. So in a way, global warming could be to the benefit of the northern people and not to the benefit of those people who live in the Maldives or on low-lying tropical islands in the Pacific. Anyhow, we stay in Hotel Ammassalik, which is the best hotel in town. That's where we stay for 2 nights. And we do also a day excursion out of Ammassalik, because there now are more whales out there than you can imagine. And given that there's not so much ice, the whales are coming closer to the coast. So we are almost guaranteed to see whales. This picture is taken right outside the harbor of Ammassalik. So that's pretty exciting. When we did our first scouting of where to put up the place we stay at, our what we call Base Camp Greenland, we took a little dinghy out and saw this little fin whale right off the dinghy. So and this year I noticed that there were humpback whales right in front of our camp, and also for the first time sperm whales were spotted deep inside the fjords. These are huge whales who can only navigate in the fjords if there are not a lot of ice, and there's less and less ice. So from a whaling perspective, from a whale watching perspective, not a whaling perspective, but whale watching perspective, global warming is a great plus for tourists who now are coming to Greenland to see the magic. So just to make it clear where we are on the map, we flew into Iceland, and then we took this flight over to Kulusuk, then a helicopter to Tasiilaq, and then we take another helicopter out to Base Camp Greenland, which we found 3 years ago, scouting, and based on my knowledge of where good things are in eastern Greenland. And I will now tell you a little bit about this place. So normally when we did our expeditions in eastern Greenland, we roughed it because there was no other place to go than staying in tents and kayak and hike. Either carry your tent or put your tent in the kayak and go on. So we wanted to basically create an experience for more than expeditioners who went for 16 days, self-sufficient expeditioners who more or less roughed it in Greenland. And for that purpose, we built what's called Base Camp Greenland. And this would be a place where people would be completely out in nature, but it will also be a luxury experience. Now, this was not easy to build this place. I can tell you, we built a total of what we call tab-ins. These are actually modified exploration structures, but modified in a very luxurious way, in the sense that these 8 structures, we call them tent cabins or tab-ins. They are very luxurious inside. They have an oil stove, so it's warm inside. They have, each of these cabins have a toilet, and then a lovely balcony in front, so you can sit there and look at the Greenland ice cap while drinking your whiskey with your ice from the ice cap in it. We built a mess hall, a storage place, and also we have showers and with hot and cold water supplied from fresh water from the nearest waterfall here in the area. There's nobody here is around here except there's a little what shall I say, outpost of 99 people 6 miles west of the place, and that's just a place where we go if we need to buy some supplies, but most supplies are actually supplied from Iceland. All our food is flown in by helicopter, and here you see a picture of the cabin during the latter part of the season, that is in late August, early September, and already then we can see northern lights. Quite lovely. This year we built a yurt because we wanted to have a place where people could sit comfortably inside and do lectures away from our mess tents, away from the kitchen. And also this yurt had to be shipped to Iceland, then shipped to Greenland, then over to this little place 6 miles west of our camp, and then by dinghy and dog sled brought over to the site and erected. Totally we have done, I think, more than 50 tons of gear that way, and it's quite a feat that this camp is there right now, the only one of its kind in eastern Greenland. Just a picture of how comfortable it is to be inside the yurt. Yes, it looks like Martha Stewart had her say in the decoration of this place. People just love it. And it's a great place to come after a long day in nature on our excursions. Again, we have hot and cold showers, separate showers for women and men, and washrooms at camp. All of this is packed up after the middle of September into our storage sheds, and then again we start the season in mid-July, and all that's left all winter are the small platforms and our storage shed. That's a picture from inside the cabin. You can see quite comfortable and luxurious. So, given that we have this base where we adventure from, what do we do? What do you actually do at the moment you have arrived? Well, we do a lot of things. We have two big zodiacs at our disposal, and what we want to do is to go out in one of the biggest fjords of Greenland, in eastern Greenland, called the Ceremony Fjord, which is very close to where our camp is. Our camp is on the ocean, so it's just going down into the zodiac and then venturing off on day trips. We supply these survival suits, which keeps you warm and cozy, and we bring our lunches and our safety gear, and off we go adventuring into the vast fjord system of eastern Greenland. It is so quiet out there when you turn the engine off and float among the icebergs, and the only noise you hear are the clicking from the mini cameras. I have never seen so many people take so many pictures of so many icebergs in so short time. It's just a fun thing to do. And if the opportunity is there, we'll get off and even stand on some of the old winter ice, and really feel how small we are in this immense nature. My dream is that we once will put up a table and some chairs and have lunch on an ice floe. I kind of suggested to the NetHab folks that it would be a good idea to get some kayaking going from Camp 2. We had kayaks from many years of expeditioning all along the coast, so we augmented those with some more, and these are very stable folding kayaks with a lot of room, and those are the ones that we built and that we offer to our clients. And kayaking is really the way to experience the marine ecosystem of Greenland. This is the way to get close to icebergs and get out. This is actually right out of camp, from the beach of the camp, and going straight west. That notch in the background is where that little outpost of Tinit is, and we do small short day trips, not more than 2 to 3 hours, and we always have a follow Zodiac with us for safety, and a kayak guide who is in constant communication with camp and with the follow boat. So if you are tired, no problem. You could just make a signal and we'll get you in the Zodiac, and you can just take pictures and enjoy and go along for the Zodiac vibe. But most people, I've never seen anybody do that yet. They all want to try to be a small little kayaker in the immenseness of the Greenland fjord system. That's a picture where we paddle by that little outpost, and you can see the Sermlik Fjord in the background. It looks like there's a lot of ice, and there is. It's called about 60% of the surface, 60 to 70% of the surface is covered by ice, which is coming from the melting and eroding glaciers that carves icebergs from the right side and pushes all these ice masses from the right to the left into the Greenland current. Wildlife, of course, we take any opportunity to see wildlife, and but I will stress that Greenland is not a place you go to specifically to see wildlife. We can almost guarantee you to see some whales in some form or fashion, either on our whaling trip or when we kayak or from camp. And we'll definitely have a chance to see foxes and the assortment of Arctic birds, seagulls, jaegers, terns. We have not yet seen any polar bears, although around camp we do have a polar bear fence to keep us safe. And also on all our excursions, you know, our guides are all trained to deal with any polar bear encounter. But it's really the nature, the habitat, the bigness of Greenland that we can offer you, not a specific wildlife trip like going to the Serengeti, to South Georgia, or to the Galapagos. Of course, our naturalist will cover everything from wildlife, including whales, to glaciology, geology, socioeconomical issues pertaining Greenland. Everything should be talked about and is talked about by our knowledgeable guides. And photography is simply a heaven. I can tell you that next year we have 10 departures, and one of them is dedicated for photography, and I think if that one sells out, we will probably open another one for photography. People have asked for that because photographers just has a different rhythm and a different need for time when they take pictures. But for sure, the Arctic and the Antarctic light is a gift for any photographer. There's nothing like it in the world. We also do some easy hiking for those who want to hike. It's all optional. We can hike behind camp, and there are some lovely lakes behind camp, and we can hike after we have taken our Zodiacs. We go out and explore. We even go across the fjord to Johan Petersen Fjord, another fjord that goes into an amphitheater where more than, I think, 30 glaciers falls right in to the ocean, and there we will probably go up to the glacier foot and touch the Greenland ice cap as it breaks off and thunders into the ocean. Here is, you can see all this ice below, how it constantly is fed by the glaciers coming off the Greenland ice cap. So we go into these fjords, and really when we take people in there, they get very quiet. And when we then tell them that what's happening with the second largest ice cap in the world, people get even more quiet. That's actually two of our good guides here. He is Eric Rock and Melissa. They're married, and he has a gun, and she has binoculars. I don't know if that says something, but as I said, the guide always has a gun to scare away any unwanted polar bears that might be in the neighborhood. But the picture here just shows you the intenseness, and that is why I call this slideshow Greenland Close Up. We will guarantee you to get super close to this amazing, amazing phenomenon in the laboratory of the world that's changing as we speak. After having spent 3 nights in Base Camp Greenland, and you can see the fjord, the Salmon Fjord, just to the left of that red dot. That's that big fjord where we do most of our excursions. But after we have spent our time there, we then go back by boat through that narrow fjord north of Tasiilaq Island and back to Kulusuk, where we stay in a hotel there in order to wait for the flight next day. We take that night in the hotel just to be sure if anything, weather or ice-wise delays us in getting there. We don't want to miss that flight going back to Iceland. So we make that circle, and that's basically the itinerary. Hotel Kulusuk is the only hotel in town. It's all right. I think it's a little bit of a downer to come from our cabins to a real hotel, but given that we have to be there, it's not a bad place to have a pint of beer in the bar. So just to give you an idea of some of the trip numbers behind this lovely experience at the Greenland base, we will be offering 10 2017 dates in that window between late July and mid-September, and for sure one of them will be is a photo departure. The whole trip from Iceland and back to Iceland, with that last night in Iceland, is 9 days. We take maximum 15 clients, and you can see the cost of this trip is what you can expect of a destination like this, where everything has to be flown in, where we do a lot of helicopter flights, and it's basically very expensive to run operations like that in a place where everything has to be transported out to the middle of nowhere. So I will end this this talk with a quote from one of my heroes, Knud Rasmussen, who was half Danish, half Inuit, and who was the first man who circumnavigated the polar basin. All true wisdom is only to be found far from the dwellings of man in great solitudes. And that's what we are doing. We are going away from man, from people. We are creating our own dwellings, but I can guarantee you, you will be in awe from the great solitude that Greenland can give you. Greenland is basically the canary in the gold mine. You know how Welsh miners brought their canaries into the mine shafts, and they always listened for that little chirp. And they knew that when the bad air got bad, in those days mostly methane gases, then the canary started to cough a little bit and be quiet. Well, Greenland is the canary of the world. Greenland is a canary in global warming. It's not silent. It thunders off big icebergs, but it certainly is worthwhile listening to these days. And we hope that you will come and you will listen to Greenland like the people who have already gone there. So with that said, call us. Look at the trip on the website. All the very specific details about this trip is on our NetHab website on the Greenland. And just call us at that toll-free number and talk to our travel specialists, many of them who has heard me talk about it before, or many of them who have already been there and have come back with awe. Thank you for everybody who gave some pictures to this presentation, including myself. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation about our Greenland trip. I didn't want you to be, go away sad. I wanted to just leave this presentation with a little bit of an afterthought and hopefully a desire to join us in one of the most magic spots on Earth. So thank you very, very much.
Olaf, thank you so much. It was a terrific presentation, and we have some good questions here. I'm just going to pause for a moment and let our audience know that if you do have a question for Olaf, you can submit it through the question box over on the right-hand side of the screen, and I will see that and will be your voice and read your question aloud for everyone's benefit. So let me start with this question. Would this be a good trip for serious birders?
I don't think so. I think that if you are looking for big bird phenomenons, here you can only see the jaegers, the seagulls, the usual seagulls and terns, and maybe an Arctic gyre falcon or owl, but it's not a place with a lot of birds, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. And just quickly, could you please repeat when you would say a good time would be to visit Greenland?
Yeah, so our trips are running from the middle of July to the beginning of September. In the middle of July, there's more light and there's more ice. And in the end, so you get more sunshine because you're closer to June, to the 24th of June. But in September it will get a little bit colder, not much, and you'll have the chance to see northern lights. So it all depends on what you're interested in.
All right, thank you. Any chance of seeing narwhals?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say we have seen narwhals sometimes from the helicopter flying from Kulusuk to Tasiilaq, but if we take our zodiacs in, they are so shy that that just the noise of our little propeller in the water will scare them away. So normally we don't see it on our zodiac excursions, but I will say that the Greenlanders tell me that more and more narwhals are showing up in the summer again because of the warmer weather and less ice. They don't like ice either. They like to go into the big glacier fronts and feed on the grilling there. So who knows, maybe in a few years we'll see much more. But don't expect them to see it on our zodiac rides.
Okay. What about other whales? Is there a specific month that would be ideal for whale watching?
Yeah, all the time we are there are possibilities to see whales from the middle of July to the middle of September. Absolutely. We have fin whales, sei whales, humpback whales, cascalot whales, killer whales, during that time for sure.
Okay, thank you. So we have a listener who was also attending a WWF webinar today entitled 2 Degrees Later, Resilience in a Changing World. And the concluding question on that webinar, they said, was how do we get people to care? Do you see that ways that the natural habitat adventures naturalists can work together and use this as an opportunity to overcome some of the atmosphere of disinterest?
Well, I mean, I worked in conservation my whole life, and I always believed that these kind of trips are very, very important for the general conservation of threatened habitats, because when our guides take you out there, they create very, very enthusiastic ambassadors. So after you have been there and shed a tear of awe and afterthought in front of these phenomenons, you will also come home and tell people that these are issues that need to be discussed and talked about and probably acted on as soon as possible. So yes, that's my hope, is that by going to this part of Greenland, and in particular this part of eastern Greenland, we can in that way grow the conscience about what's happening in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, that was our final question. So I will stop there and turn it over to you for closing comments.
Well, thank you very much. I'm always very happy to share I tell my wife that Greenland is my first love. She doesn't like to hear that, but I'm so happy that I can spread this little message about the biggest island in the world. And you're welcome to email me at olafm@nathab.com, and I can even answer more questions. And again, call us at the office, and we'll certainly try to answer all the questions you have, and let's see if we can spread this the word here about this canary in the gold mine. Thank you so much.
And my thanks as well, and we will get the replay out to all of you. It should be in your email box by about this time tomorrow. And be on the lookout for an email invitation from us on our next topic. So with that, we will say good day and conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everybody.